a very dangerous teaching. And what I'm dealing with here is I believe that when we do the Exodus, when we get to Mount Sinai, excuse me, I'm not sick, I just have a cough. Sorry about that. I believe we're going to have a tabernacle again, and we're going to start the whole thing up. And most people who hear this are going to say that's dangerous teaching because that's against Deuteronomy 12. He's going to place his name on a location in a tribe, which we know is Jerusalem, tribe being Benjamin, and that's the place you worship, and only the place you worship. And that's what Deuteronomy 12 says. But if we walk through the entire Deuteronomy 12, I think it gives us some other issues. So let's kind of walk through Deuteronomy 12. And because this is going to have a lot of implications. And remember, this is a very dangerous teaching because if I'm wrong, if we try to worship God in a way that we want to do it, or anything like that, what's going to happen to us is death. So this is a very serious issue. And there's certainly going to be some questions on this. But let's walk this thing through. Deuteronomy 12. And the first part of it is wiping out the idols and don't worship me in the way that in the way of those who you're wiping out. The Christians, Muslims, anything else, any of the Babylonians that are coming out of Babylon, we're to get them out. In verse 5, but you are to seek the place of the Lord your God, will choose from among all your tribes to put his name there for his dwelling. And again, we know that place is Jerusalem. To that place you must go. There you're to bring your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your tithe and special gifts, what you have vowed to give, and your freewill offerings, and the firstborn of your herds and flocks. And it continues on this vein. This is the location. When we are on the Exodus, we will not be in or around Jerusalem. Are you saying to me that when he has all of us together, and we know our tribes because we will camp together with our tribes and clans, and we should be around the tabernacle, honestly. But how can we be around the tabernacle if we have to wait till we get to Jerusalem? And so we would have our tribal, so we would have the Levites, we'd have the priest, we'd have the Sanhedrin, we just wouldn't have this altar. And I think verse 8, but you are not to do as we do here today. Here, meaning during the Exodus, doing as they see fit, since you have not yet reached the resting place and the inheritance your God is giving you. We've not yet reached that location. Well, during the Exodus, we haven't reached it yet. So we're able to do it until we reach that. That's going to become clearer in the next verse. But you will cross the Jordan and settle in the land the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. And he will give you rest from all your enemies around you so that you will live in safety. That seems millennial reign to me. I mean, that's screaming millennial reign to me. Then to the place the Lord your God will choose as a dwelling for his name, there you're to bring everything I command you, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your tithes and special gifts, and all the choice possessions you have vowed to the Lord. And there rejoice before the Lord your God, you, your sons, your daughters, your male and female servants, and the Levites from the towns who have no allotment or inheritance of their own. Be careful not to sacrifice your burnt offerings anywhere you please. Offer them only at the place the Lord will choose. And remember, that's will choose, even though we know where that is, in one of your tribes. And there observe everything I command you. And so when we are on the Exodus, and I guess I think of it this way. He has given us incredible details on the tabernacle, on the clothing, on the altars, how to do these things. Why? Why give us that? Why give us that information if it's not needed. I mean, he could have just said, hey, do this, and then don't worry, and he could have done Deuteronomy 12, and it would have been it. He wouldn't have had to went into the how you put the rings on all these little things, how you put your brackets, where the wood is, who transports it. He wouldn't have to go through that. Because he would have had to deal with the transport because they moved the excuse me, as they moved the altar. But until that time, you know, you don't have to get into the details of how you make it, because once it's made, it's made. Unless we're going to have to do that in the future and do it all over again, at least the parts of it. Now, since the tribe of Benjamin, their breastplate stone is known. I would imagine that that is the breastplate stone that will come from the tribe of Benjamin. Maybe the others are new. Maybe, you know, again, certainly the creator of the universe knows where the old ones are. He might bring them all back. Or, again, he might just have new ones for certain things. That's a question. But again, you should have that natural distrust of this lesson or study, because we just can't do it our own way. And even if our desire is to worship the Creator, we don't get to do that in our own way. We have to follow the Torah. But if he's got all this other stuff together and we're to camp around the tabernacle during the Exodus, I see that we're going to have a tabernacle during the Exodus again. And I say that more so for, while this would fit, I see it more for the coming of the Messiah, for the high priest. Because when we cross the Jordan, we are putting up a pillar as required, and then we're going off to Armageddon. And, put up that pillar, do it fast, get it done, and let's go on to Armageddon, because our Messiah comes in Armageddon. But it's much more than that. He's going to come. I don't think Armageddon for him is going to take more than 10 minutes. Maybe an hour at most. I mean, the cleanup may take a while, but, his portion, it's just, there's the victory. It's over. I'm now going off to Jerusalem because it is the Feast of Trumpets. And there's a sacrifice to do. Are you telling me that our Messiah, when he comes back, can't do a sacrifice until such time that the temple is built? And I think, we have that I want to say it's in Daniel, where the altar is unclean for a number of days. And maybe that's the time that it takes to build the temple, so that we have a tabernacle for the Messiah to deal with and do his altars, do the morning and evening sacrifices, to do the Sabbath sacrifices, which are double, to do the new moon sacrifices, which are massive, and the other sacrifices, those are there, so that we would have that until the temple is built, because we're going to have, the temple won't be built in a day. It just won't be. But there's going to be something there. And again, it just doesn't fit that we would have a high priest come back and not be able to do a sacrifice. So the only way he can do that is if we have a tabernacle ready for him. And so again, I think we will. David, when he was the king, that he's the one who was given the issue of, this is the location where I'm going to put my name. He had to do the tabernacle there until Solomon built that temple. So it's a dangerous thing, but it's the only way that fits to me. It's the only way that makes sense, is that during the Exodus, we start the tabernacle again. And again, I know it's going to kind of sound crazy, and I know people are going to say you can't do that. It's got to be Jerusalem. But we haven't crossed into the Jordan yet to get our inheritance. And even if you are in the tribe of Benjamin or Levi or Judah, and you are in Israel, that's not your inheritance yet. Because Ezekiel 48 has made clear there's an entire new inheritance. There's an entirely new one. And so you could be in Israel proper right now, and let's assume that you're in the tribe of Judah or tribe of Benjamin, And you are actually in Ezekiel 48, the location where you would be. So in other words, for Judah, just above Jerusalem, or Benjamin, just below Jerusalem. And so your home is actually where your inheritance would be. Is that going to be your land when you go back? Still got to draw lots, you still have to do all this other stuff to get it. So, and in fact, you may be getting a newer house, or an older house, better house, or a worse house. You know, we get an entire new inheritance when we go back. So Deuteronomy 12 becomes effective yet again. We know where that location is going to be. And where was it before? It was in the tribe of Benjamin. Where is it going to be this time? It's in a specific location. It's actually in the allotment inside of, for the Levites, and specifically on the Levites, for the Zadok, sons of Zadok, for the high priest, for the priest. That's where the temple's going to be. So it's changed inheritance. It was Benjamin. It will be sons of Zadok. So again, it's the inheritance, and that inheritance has not been given to us. And that inheritance is only good for 1,000 years. Because the millennial reign is 1,000 years. So for my tribe, which is Asher, we will be up around the area of around Beirut, Lebanon, heading up north of that. And I say that because Naphtali would be Beirut going down, as I've done the math. And my math could be off. But when, at the end, when we have the second resurrection, because again, we're still going to die, we'll come back in the second resurrection, we'll get our glorified bodies, and there's an entire new inheritance there. We know that because heaven, that section is much larger. It's highly unlikely the house you're in during the millennial reign, and that is inherited through by your children and great grandchildren, all the way down until the end of time, or the end of time on this earth, for human bodies and not transformed bodies. But it's highly unlikely that even if that's in your inheritance when heaven is redistributed, it's highly unlikely that that will still be your house then, even if it's in your tribal land. Again, it's going to be a whole new inheritance issue. So I think the inheritance issue is what really kicks this off. And I think, again, the Messiah has to have an altar and a tabernacle. He's going to be doing his stuff. Not just going to put an altar out there for the high priest to say, well, I only have an altar. I don't have everything else. It's just not going to happen. We're going to have that stuff ready to go so that the day he comes back, as long as it takes him to get from Armageddon back to Jerusalem and to start doing those services, that's how long it'll take him. And that's all as long as it'll take him. And he's going to start that stuff back up. Now again, that's my feeling. It's a very strong held opinion. It's a dangerous opinion, because if I'm wrong, again, if we're trying to worship him in our own ways, that's a death sentence. So